If a tree is poorly rooted or doesn't have deep roots, it is easily knocked over during a storm. And Christians, people even, are no different. But how does someone become rooted? Where do they start? In today's episode, I have Deano Casola here.
Hey guys.
To tell us where to dig so we can too be rooted in God and not so easily knocked down during life storms. Man, and speaking of storms, Deano, we've had some storms over here, haven't we?
It's been wild this last week or so.
Yeah, this weather, like even, man, again, last night, or was at my house,
Yeah.
like, oh goodness, all this wild stuff. My house lost power for a few hours last week. Did yours?
No, thankfully we did not.
No, ours did a little bit. But
It's been bad.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming out today, and I'm just excited to have this conversation with you. Today's show, your story is a little bit different from the ones I've had before, but it's a great one, and I just can't wait to share it and do it.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to share.
Yeah. So tell us, where does your story begin?
So summer of 2012, maybe fall of 2013, kind of gets into some mucky rebellion, wrestling, I guess, with God on what he had and my experiences.
Yeah. So what happened during that time? I guess that was 10 years ago?
Yeah, 11 years ago. I was a new believer, was finishing high school, getting ready to go to college, and my girlfriend, Becca, who's now my wife, we were breaking up. I was moving 8 hours away. It was just a lot of change and a lot of new things.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
Missouri Southern in Joplin, Missouri. Middle of nowhere.
Did you have a football scholarship there?
Yeah, I went there to play football. Yep.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah. And Becca went somewhere else?
She went to Mississippi College to play soccer.
Yeah.
So we were quite a ways apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys had dated most of high school, right?
Yeah, we started dating the spring semester in 2009, our freshman year.
Wow.
And then
high school sweethearts, huh?
Yeah, and then broke up a week before graduation. So,
dang,
yeah.
That is not how graduation week's supposed to go.
No, it was not very
Becca,
fun.
what were you thinking?
Yeah. Yep.
I guess she had lots of thoughts then. But
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and weren't you guys prom, king and queen or something?
Yeah, we were prom king and queen, Mr. and Miss West Monroe,
all the things.
all the things.
Yeah. So was it out of the blue for you, or did you know something was coming? Or
It was pretty out of the blue.
Yeah.
I think she, and not to speak for her, but we've talked about this a lot. I think she was wrestling with, because honestly, it was the only real relationship either one of us had ever been in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we're moving away. We're super separated.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to see what else is out there. And if this thing is real, then
it'll come
happen.
back. Yeah. It'll come back. Well, good thing for her, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. But man, all breakups, really, and they're tough for both parties. I've been through plenty of them myself. They're tough for both parties. But what made this one tough for you?
Yeah. I was a new believer, like I mentioned, and Becca was deeply, deeply rooted in her faith. And I was probably a little too dependent on her and her faith and hadn't really started to establish my own roots. So not only was I losing my girlfriend, I was losing somebody that was keeping me grounded in my faith.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Man, how long had you, been, a new believer before going off to college? When did you come to Christ?
I came to Christ in the fall of 2010 at Youth Impact, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, 2010 was when it was. So I had maybe a year and a half or 2 years into this Christian thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any type of basis for my religion.
Yeah.
I'd grown up around it.
Yeah.
I'd never really grown up in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Becca was, like I've mentioned over and over already, that foundation for me in my faith.
Was she the one that presented the gospel to you?
Yes. Yeah. We were sitting on her parents' porch swing and she said, let's go for a walk. And I said, all right, which was not uncommon. And we started walking around the neighborhood, and she just laid it out.
Wow.
I know it was the first time anybody had truly face to face just like explained Christianity, explained God, explained Jesus and what he had done for us and how much he loved us, and she just laid it out there. And it was beautiful because, now as believers that we try to do that. We try to show people that, but it was flawless. And she did a really good job, though I didn't accept her invitation at the time.
Yeah, but I think it's encouraging to hear for other people out there, like, just because they didn't accept in that moment doesn't mean it didn't make an impact.
Right. No, it was a great seed planting moment for her, for sure.
Yeah. What were your thoughts at that time? If you can remember, that was like over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, like, this is really hard for her.
Yeah.
And she's super passionate about what she's telling me.
Yeah.
So I respected.
Yeah.
And just listened.
Yeah.
It was like a foreign language because I had no basis of knowledge of what she was really talking about.
Yeah.
So that really started the ball rolling in my faith. But it was easy to listen. It was easy to understand because A, I knew how much she loved me.
Yeah.
And B, I could tell how passionate and like how much she really meant what she was saying.
Yeah. Something important to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an encouraging word in itself, like for others now. Like, I think it's evident when we actually care about the people we're sharing it with, and then that we actually care about what we're talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we do know, because you just said that y'all had broken up and you went your separate ways.
Yep.
And so, in what way did you struggle in college with this?
Every way. So I went to Missouri and I didn't know a soul. I didn't know a coach. I didn't know a player. I didn't know anybody within several hours. And that's a bad spot to be if you're not grounded.
Yeah.
And I was not. I went there with good intentions.
Yeah.
Of trying to get plugged into an FCA and find a church home, but those things didn't happen. I just felt like you talked about, like a tree without good roots, just getting blown around in the wind. Society was pushing me left and right, and every time you try to get up, it pushed you back down. And I struggled with trying to fit in. I struggled with trying to find meaningful relationships with friends and even with coaches. It was just and college is a different animal too. It
is. I think it's, Caleb and I talk about this, like it's harder to make friends as an adult. It really is.
Yeah. And it's such a small community that everybody that lived within an hour of Joplin went to Missouri Southern. So not only did I not know anybody, they all knew each other.
Yeah, it just makes it harder to like break ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did. And football was not fun.
Oh.
It was not fun. You think you're pretty good in high school, and then you go try it in college. You're like, everybody's pretty good here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are some things like you just don't know until you find out. Like,
that's right.
So it's kind of part of the process, Yeah. Man. So we got a little taste of, like that you did struggle and stuff, but why was it really, really like what did you struggle with the most?
So I think if I had to explain my biggest struggle, it would be not knowing how to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Because I had probably a year and a half or 2 years of practice, if you will.
Yeah.
With Bible studies, with Sunday mornings, with small groups.
Yeah, with Becca. Yeah.
And then I had none of those things.
Yeah.
So it was me and my Bible, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, what to read or what this stuff means. Because some of that stuff is like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So my biggest struggle was not knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Well, and the support, like you're saying, you had no support group, and that's
correct.
That's big too. Like community, it's huge.
Yeah, and I think a bad false expectation, maybe is the way to put it, is a lot of people think, I know I did, when you become a believer, it's just like a straight trajectory to holiness or to godliness, or and it's not. I mean, it's a roller coaster with twists and turns and flips, and some stops and some backups. And
I mean, he's chiseling away things about you that you didn't know you needed fixed.
Right. You really realize how selfish you are and how much you think you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, he humbles you over and over again. Yeah. You know, that's a big part of submitting to him. Yeah. And, you know, until, you know, the blinders are on forever. Mm-hmm. And then we actually, you know, accept him. The blinders are coming off. Yeah. And then he's chiseling it away as more as you learn. Yeah. 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 It's not something you know right off.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. And I think you realize how much time you spend serving yourself. And then you get into the word and you realize that the old you is dead and the new you is now a servant to Christ. So you're battling this fleshly desire to serve yourself, which the world tells you to do. Yeah. To lift yourself, to advance yourself, to do all these things
you
for yourself.
You and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then the Bible is the 100% opposite. To serve Christ.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to become, you know, grounded or rooted in Christ?
I'm still becoming. Yeah. Yeah. So it was the summer of 13 and I moved back home to ULM and moved back in with my parents, which everybody loves to do.
Oh, yeah. I did that once. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. But like those things that I mentioned before with the Sunday schools and the Wednesday night studies and the Sunday mornings, those are what I got back into when I got home. Yeah. And those are the things that I now knew I wasn't rooted. Yeah. And I knew that I wanted to become rooted. Yeah. So I started searching for that with the community around me to help me, teach me, and show me how to become independent in my faith.
Yeah. So was it easier to get plugged in here just because, like, you knew West Monroe?
That was part of it. Yeah. And the other part of it was I knew I had people in my corner that I could ask and that I could lean on. And Michael Wood was still our youth pastor.
Wow. Isn't that weird to think about?
Yeah.
Yeah, because listeners, you might not know this, but he is now, Michael Wood, like he just said, was the youth pastor then. He is now the lead pastor at First West that we both attend. So it's been time has gone by.
Yeah, we didn't realize what we had for a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Kind of a home run there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow. So about a year and a half, here's what you're saying, before you felt really...
Yeah, somewhere in there between 12 and 18 months probably of just adjusting to quitting football, adjusting to transferring schools, adjusting to living in this town again without Becca. Yeah. So even though moving to Missouri was a ton of changes, moving back home was a ton of changes too.
Yeah.
And just really wrestling and trying to understand why this Christian thing felt so hard. Why though I knew I accepted Christ, I didn't feel like I was advancing at all in my faith. So yeah, I'd say somewhere between 12 and 18 months before I started to understand, because I still don't understand. Before I started to understand that, like, this is it's not even day by day. I mean, it's minute by minute.
Yeah.
Because you realize how selfish your heart is and how sinful your heart is.
Yeah.
And how if you're not on the offensive, battling those desires and battling those temptations, then you're losing ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. How did you know that your faith was really becoming your own?
So like I talked about, some of those groups and some of those guys that I really leaned into and relied on once I got home encouraged me to take ownership of my faith and to not rely on Wednesdays, to not rely on Sundays, to not rely on the message on Sunday mornings, but to dig in for yourself.
Yeah.
To start reading on your own, to start journaling on your own, to start praying and you're writing your prayer requests down and looking for ways that God's going to answer them because He always answers.
Yeah.
Just may not be what we want or what we're expecting. So I think when you start to really take ownership and really make your faith your own, and you have a visual aid, at least for me, when you have that visual aid of these prayers that I've written down and you can go back and look at the way that God's answered them, and you start to understand the Bible when you open it and you just begin to read through it, whether that's the New Testament or the Old Testament, whatever it is, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And you get to see over and over again God's faithfulness,
Yeah.
God's honor and keeping his word.
Mm-hmm.
And it begins to become somebody that you start to understand.
Yeah.
Because you're spending time with them.
Yeah. Just like you would a real person.
Right.
You know, and God is real. So
Yes.
I think
goodness.
we forget that sometimes. Or like, I think we put him up here in this box or this bubble. And it's like, no, like he's a real person.
Yeah.
And the way to grow with him is to treat him like he's a real person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So do you know what Becca was doing during that time? At all? Like, did y'all keep in? Because some people when they break up, like, because y'all were a serious couple before, like,
right.
They still kind of keep tabs on each other, even if it's like looking at someone's Facebook or something.
Oh yeah.
Did you know at all what she's going through during that time?
A little bit.
Yeah.
We did keep in contact some.
Yeah.
Because for 4 years we were
like
boyfriend girlfriend. So
yeah.
We had a lot of memories together and a lot of friends together.
Yeah.
So she would come home and for holidays or whatever it was, and we may run into each other because this is West Monroe. It's a little small town.
Yeah. Hard not to.
Right. We'd see each other at football games or things like that. So we were friendly. Mm-hmm. But she was doing her thing. She was going to nursing school and she was still playing soccer. And I think she had a boyfriend there for a while, which I think probably gave me some closure.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really closure, I guess, but what it felt like was closure at the time. It's like, okay. It's time to move on, and it's time to just keep pushing forward. So yeah, we talked some, but not much.
Yeah. Wow. How long were you like apart?
We broke up in the summer of 12 and got back together 15. I think it was 2015.
Yeah.
She may correct me for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool, though.
It's really, really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God was all up in the middle of it. Thank goodness.
Yeah. So when you were trying to figure out things with God, what gave you hope and encouragement?
Man, it feels like there wasn't a whole lot of hope. It feels like I had done something wrong. I never really wrestled with my salvation, but it feels like I should have almost because of some of the concerns that I had.
Yeah,
that I did something wrong, or I didn't take the right steps, or maybe I said the prayer wrong. I'm not sure, but it just felt like, and looking around, nobody else is struggling this hard. Nobody else is wrestling this hard. Which is
false.
Yeah, which is 100% a lie from Satan himself that he uses to keep you from saying anything. Yeah, that he uses to keep you down and keep you in that sorrow and in that pit. Because all you have to do is ask. If you ask anybody that's on this road to Christianity, it's a grind.
Yeah,
and if I would have reached out, if I would have asked somebody, what am I doing wrong? They would have said nothing.
Nothing.
You're not doing anything wrong. It's
the
hard.
fact that you're opening it up and pursuing it means you're doing it right.
Yeah. So I didn't have a ton of hope or a ton of encouragement during that.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that I knew I was saved. So thankfully he didn't allow me to struggle with the fact of my sanctification.
I think that would have been.
That'd have been a little too much.
Too much, yeah. I agree with that. I can imagine being too hard to keep going. Yeah, if you struggle with that part too. Sure. Yeah, man. All right. So, did you learn any scripture during this time of growth that just really resonated with you?
Yeah, there's several that I could mention, but one that stands out more than the others is Micah 7:7, and it says, "Therefore, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me." And it's just such a simple verse. There's no mystery there. Yeah. There's no wonder. It's just such an encouragement. And if you read through Micah, the minor prophets are all great. They're just warriors for God. And it just encourages me to be patient. Yeah. It encourages me to be okay without having an answer. Because I know that he hears me. Yeah. And I know that he holds my salvation in his hand, and then I can trust him because of that.
I mean, I can definitely see how that would have been an anchor for you, especially during that time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then another one that's always encouraged me and just kind of made me want to stand a little taller is Ezekiel 22:30. It says, I searched for a man among them who could repair the wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land so that I might not destroy it. But I found no one. And during this time, the wall around the city was the only type of security or protection that they had. And if there was a gap in the wall, then the enemy could come straight in without any struggle.
Yeah.
So the analogy here, the picture here that paints in your mind is that the city was broken, and all it needed was one person to stand in the gap, and nobody would.
Yeah.
So it encourages me to keep myself ready.
Yeah.
To stay in the Word, to stay in communication with Him, so that if there is a gap, that I would be able to see it.
Yeah.
And then it encourages me to check on my brothers and sisters around me.
Yeah.
Because if their walls are down, then I can stand in the gap for them as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
So good.
And I think it really ties a really good bow on the struggle of when we're in these seasons of strife and sorrow and just pity, and it feels so hard, and you feel so alone. Something that's always worked for me is standing in the gap for somebody else.
Yeah.
So anytime that I feel like this is really hard for me, or this is really bad for me, or I don't like what's going on, if I will start to pray for someone else, if I will start to care for someone else, if I will start to stand in the gap for someone else, and take my eyes off of myself, I realize that it's not as bad as you think it may be.
Yeah.
And God uses that so effectively to get your eyes back on Him while caring for someone else.
And just community in itself. Yeah. That's how it's supposed to go both ways. That's something I think special about the Christian faith is that that's kind of something that comes along with it. Yeah. That's also a marker how you know if you're doing it right. It's like you should be plugged in somewhere. This is not a lone wolf thing. Right. At all. Yeah. And so that's one way you can know if you're at least somewhat doing it right. And
that's a really good point too, because we've talked a lot about making your faith your own and taking ownership of your faith. And those things are both important. Yeah. You can't have your grandma's faith. Right. You can't have your ex-girlfriend's faith. You have to take ownership of that. But you've also got to be in community with other people that have that faith. Yeah. So it requires both things.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I felt like what you were saying earlier, why it was such a struggle in Missouri is because you didn't have that community. Correct. You were struggling to have that community. Yeah. But when it was easier to have it here, and that's when you really were kind of flourishing. Yeah. That's what I was hearing. Yep. So I'm like, man, this is a testament to why community is so important,
Yeah, and I didn't want anybody to hear that and think that they have to do it on their own, that they have to dig in and fight on their own and make their faith their own. Like, yes, you have to take ownership of your relationship with Jesus Christ, and you have to talk to Him, and you have to pray with Him, and you have to read His Word. But man, we're not made to do life by ourselves. Yeah. Like, it's all about community. I mean, God was in community. It was God the Father and the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ the Son.
I mean, He's always in community.
Always in community. Always. So we cannot think that we can do anything on our own. Yeah. So I just wanted to make that point.
Man, and I just think it's neat too. Like you just shared about these two Old Testament scriptures, and I'm like, how did that happen? How did you stumble upon those? Just because for a lot of new Christians, they kind of stick in like the Gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and maybe some Romans there. Yeah. So I think it's kind of unique that you like somehow stumbled upon these Old Testament scriptures. Yeah. And that was like your landing point for a while. So how did that happen?
It's a really good question that I don't really know the exact answer to. Micah 7:7. I may be wrong, but I'm fairly certain Becca actually shared that with me.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Back in the late summer, shortly
after.
What
a seed right there.
Yeah, shortly after we'd broken up. So she just constantly kept weaving her way back into my life. And then Ezekiel 22:30 came from a sermon series. Oh.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where I was at or who the preacher was, but he had been just going through Ezekiel for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then, like I talked about the picture painted here of caring for one another, of fighting for one another, and fighting for yourself.
Yeah.
And not letting yourself wallow too long.
Yeah.
And it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to struggle, and all those things are okay. But we can't stay there.
Yeah, I've had that conversation before with somebody. It's like, you just got to fight.
Yeah.
Why? You got to fight it.
Yeah.
Because with the person I was having the conversation with was a family member, and I knew where they were. So we had that relationship and stuff. And I was like, the things, like, use your sword, apply it for yourself on that end. So I say that to say I wasn't being callous towards that person, but I was letting them know, like, hey, pick up your sword. I know you know it. Yeah. It's time to use it. I can help you use it.
Exactly.
We can be wielding it together, but you got to pick it up, Yeah.
So that's a good reminder too of this faith that we call our own. It's not easy. Mm-mm. And it's never going to be easy. Yeah. And it wasn't meant to be easy. Mm-mm. Because everything that Scripture requires us to do, to deny ourselves and pick up our cross daily and to pursue Him, is to deny yourself, is to deny your sin, to deny your flesh, to constantly fight against that. Yeah. And not only fighting against yourself, you're fighting against the world. Yeah. You're fighting against the culture who tells you to do whatever you have to do to advance yourself. Step over anybody that you have to step over to advance yourself. Yeah. So it is a constant fight. Yeah. Yeah. So, we talked about Scripture, we talked about community, what other ways did God bring you near to Him? So I was wrestling a little bit back in Missouri in that summer of 13. Yeah. Because the fall, I had a really good chance to be the starter, and I was starting to make some friends. Yeah. They weren't probably the friends I needed to be making. Yeah. But I was finding myself in a crowd, and I was struggling with, do I come home or do I go back and stick it out because I don't want to be a quitter and all the things. Mm-hmm. But God really used two people to make it clear to me that it was time to come home. Yeah. And the first one was my mom, and it was such a simple conversation. I remember it like it was nothing. I came home. We had like 2 weeks off right after school before summer started. And I came home, and I think we were in the pool just hanging out, just the three of us, me, my mom, my dad. Yeah. And my dad walked inside, and she just looked at me, and she said, it's okay to come home. Mm. And her and I had never had a conversation about me coming home. Not about how hard it was, not about me quitting. She just said, it's okay to come home. Yeah. And it was just like, okay. That was just such confirmation from her, from God, really, because she didn't know. Yeah. But she knew enough as a mother to speak into that moment. And the other was my grandfather. Yeah. Which was her dad. Mm. We used to live in their backyard, and he was an iron worker, and he was a World War II veteran, and he was like, he was just the guy. Yeah. We did everything. He taught me how to drive. He taught me how to hunt. He taught me how to fish. Yeah. He taught me how to work. Yeah. And he was pretty close to the end of his life. And I felt really selfish for playing football somewhere that I didn't really want to be. Yeah. And not getting some more time with him. Mm, so between my desire to spend some more time with him and then God just speaking directly through my mom. Yeah. Of telling me that it's okay to come home. Made it really easy. Yeah. I really, that statement there about being, feeling selfish and whatnot, I feel like that's a real marker of maturity of seeing like what's important in life. Yeah. This maybe not football career or my family, and knowing that that's valuable. Yeah. To both parties. Yeah. Because there was no football career past Missouri Southern, that's for sure. Yeah. And it probably wasn't going to go very far there either. Yeah. But it just made me think, what am I doing this for? Yeah. Why am I here? Mm-hmm. And what good is going to come of this? Yeah. And it was, you're not enjoying yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not growing in your faith. Yeah. You're struggling. And your family's back home just missing you. Yeah. So just just come back home.
Yeah. At that point, no brainer. Yeah. Man. So you mentioned earlier, like you transferred to good old ULM, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's my alma mater as well.
That's right.
Feeling that. So I guess the answer is like why you're. I knew you're a big ULM fan. I was like, why is he a big ULM fan?
That's right.
Because most people from here aren't.
No.
Boo, you guys.
Yeah,
you're missing out. My entire family is a ULM grad. So yeah, and the answer is that question.
Yeah.
But man, so how did coming home? So you came home. I guess you're able to plug back in, and you found that community.
Yeah.
So is that what helped you like grow your roots more?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I got back into some guys that were kind of in some similar situations.
Yeah.
We were all kind of separated going to colleges. A few of them had moved back home. We didn't want to be stuck in that rut of just of living in your hometown and not really doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were encouraged to be different. We were encouraged to get together and to make ourselves better than some examples that we had seen, some of our older friends or whatever it may be. And we all had the same goal of digging deeper together in the Word.
Did you join the BCM at ULM?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not. Unfortunately, I spent as little time there as possible.
Oh, man,
I really wish I would have.
I almost lived there.
Yeah. I lived at home and I worked as much as possible when I wasn't in class.
Okay, yeah.
Which wasn't very much.
Yeah. I didn't live in my car, but I lived in my car. If that makes sense. Like I would bring clothes with me. I would take showers at the activity center sometimes because I worked at the mall, which is near there. And I did have full-time classes, but in between there, I would just hang out at the PCM. Yeah. That was me. So I was just curious if that played a part in any of that, because that was a community for me.
When I moved home, there's only one thing I'd ever wanted to be in my entire life, and that was a football coach. So I moved home, and West Monroe High School called, and they asked if I wanted to start student coaching.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, absolutely. So any chance that I had of free time, I spent at the high school.
Okay.
I spent learning. I spent working.
Yeah.
Everything from washing clothes to cleaning floors to anything that I could do. Because that's all I'd ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
Was a football coach. So I spent as little time possible learning how to be a teacher at school. And way too much time trying to learn how to be a coach at West Monroe High School. So
Yeah. Oh, the young years. Man, that time of my life I just never want to redo. That was tough.
No, I'm
time.
good. Once was enough.
It's just so stressful.
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy for college people. Really do. So I never want to redo any of that. Man. Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that you and Becca did reconnect. Y'all reconnected like 3 years later.
Yeah.
Man. Like, because she said the change in you. Did she notice that right off? Or
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And she would tell you the same thing. She called me out of the blue one day before she headed back to school and said that she wanted to just talk. So we talked for a few minutes, and she said, I want you back. I want to be back together. I realize that you've grown and you've changed, but I'll wait as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And at the time I told her no, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Because I had come so far from being probably dependent on her to learning how to be independent.
Yeah.
And I think that was exactly what God needed me to do or wanted me to do, was learn how to live for him without her.
Yeah.
So that then I could live for him with her.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, because now you're leading your family together.
Yeah. I mean, we just celebrated 6 years of marriage. We've got a 3-year-old son and a 6-month-old daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, so he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. That way you can be the man of your house and lead your whole family the way they needed to be. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. So what did you learn about God from all of this?
So I like you mentioned kind of earlier too, is like I like spending a lot of time in the Old Testament. And I think in the Old Testament, without looking through the correct lens, God can be seen as harsh, maybe judgmental. But I think what I learned through those years was like, God's not harsh. No. God extends so much grace and so much mercy. And his love is just totally unconditional. And what I learned was what it meant to be a part of that, what it meant to be adopted into his family. Yeah. By accepting this free gift of love and mercy and salvation that he offers And I learned by reading his word through those tough times that regardless of my feelings, regardless of my circumstances, that I could trust him, that I could trust his word, that I could call on him and he would answer.
Yeah.
That I never had to worry about his plan or his actions changing, because though culture may flip-flop and waver, but he's just steady as can be.
Yeah, I mean, 1 minute science is this, next minute science is now something different.
Yeah. Yeah, and the culture is not even every minute, it's every couple seconds.
So it's like, oh, okay, I thought the standard was this, and now it's different. But God's standard doesn't change. It's been the same since the beginning. So for sure. Man, like you're just one of the top notch guys. You really are, like, in my mind. And there's a few of you got that. Landon was here a few weeks ago. I put him in the same category. Grant, y'all are some of the men I think of that I know, like, y'all know the Lord, and it's no question where you guys stand and who you are, your character, all about that. And people just know, like, the God's your compass, and that's good. We need more men like that in our culture. And thank you for standing in the gap. I do think you're living to that now, for sure.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I still have to ask, now that, you learned all these things about Jesus, you've learned to trust in him, and you are the man that you are today. But from that point where you were at the beginning, how has that impacted your relationship with Christ? How has that allowed you to grow in him?
I think struggles and difficult times, and really just wrestling with God. Like, wrestling with God's okay. Yeah. I think we mentioned it before in life group. It's like, God wants your honesty. Yeah. You don't have to clean yourself up. You don't have to say the right words with God. He wants your honesty. He wants because he knows already. Yeah. So you're not helping yourself by trying to sugarcoat your words with God, or to act like you're not mad at God if you are. Yeah. So what I learned through that was to just be honest. Yeah. To just have a conversation with him. Whether you like it, whether you don't, whether you're happy where you're at, whether you're not. And that's paved the way for my faith. And the way that I continue to grow is, there may be seasons of where I'm not in the Word like I want to be, or where my prayer life is really lacking, but I can always pick up right where I left off with just having a conversation. Yeah. Because like you mentioned earlier, he's a real person. Yeah. And we're just talking. Yeah. And he wants to hear from you so bad. Yeah. He just wants to have that conversation. Yeah. So really boiling it down to that helps me to either get back going like I know that I need to, or to continue to just talk to my Father. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So if you came across someone today that is now going through something that, something similar to what you went through, what would you tell them? The first thing that I would say is read James 1:2-4, which says, Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. And if you're struggling with being new in your faith, or even a season of distance, I want you to know that it's not uncommon. Yeah. That it's probably happened to every believer out there. That at some point in time in their walk, they've felt distant from God. That they've not understood the path that they're on. That they're struggling to understand why it's going the way it's going. So you need to start with pleading with God for him to teach you what he's doing, for him to allow you to see what's going on, that you need to be into his word, that you need to understand that this faith thing is difficult. It's very, very difficult, and it requires a fight. So I've always been encouraged also by, if you're not struggling, if you're not battling, you may not be in the place that you need to be.
Yeah.
If life feels really easy and everything's just kind of hunky dory, you may need to reevaluate. Are you in the fight?
Yeah.
No, I don't go looking for a fight. I'm not really searching for a whole bunch of temptation and struggles, but we should be pressing back the gates of hell every day.
Yeah.
And you do those things by loving on other people, by sharing with other people, by caring for those, like Scripture tells us to, the widows and the poor, and the orphans. But in that season of struggle, to get your eyes off yourself, to focus on God, to focus on God's truths, to focus on God's character and who He is, and let somebody else in on what's going on.
Yeah.
To talk to somebody else about it, and don't give up.
Yeah.
Keep fighting. Stand in the gap.
That's a good word, Deano. So much encouragement in that. It's good stuff. Man, what a story today. I really enjoyed it. And I knew some things just because, I've been in a life group with Becca as well. But man, now I get the full story.
That's right.
I mean, salvation story, you got Jesus, you have eternity now, and you got the girl. How cool is that?
It doesn't get any better.
Yeah. I mean, Hallmark, here we come. Seriously, though, and thank you so much for sharing your story. I like that we kind of parked in it and really fleshed out, what sometimes could seem like a barrier to new Christians. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it'll be encouragement for many others.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
My name is Deano, and this is my story of the middle.
I'm your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast. If you're interested in getting a little extra perks or learning more about the guests I interview, check out my Patreon account in the show notes.
Psalm 40, verse 2. He brought me up from a desolate pit, out of the muddy clay, and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure.